He was destined for eternal legend, they said, yet even he couldn't outrun the secrets that haunted Hollywood. Can you imagine a beloved cultural icon, gone after just 3 major movie roles, yet leaving behind a swirl of whispers more electrifying than the bright lights of Tinseltown itself? That searing intensity belongs to James Dean, the young and magnetic actor who met a tragic end in the middle of the 1950s. But behind the scenes, behind the bold persona revealed in Rebel Without a Cause and Giant, lurks a remarkable relationship that could never be fully acknowledged in that conservative era. And now, decades later, that relationship finally takes center stage, thanks to an ambitious new film, Willie and Jimmy Dean. Today, we're pulling back the velvet curtain on Dean's complex love life, on the Hollywood system that made secrets a survival tool, and on how the actor Brandon Flynn plans to give us a James Dean we've never truly seen before. Is it possible that we only knew half the truth about James Dean? That question, burning with equal parts curiosity and indignation, fuels the story behind this brand new biopic. The film will dramatize Dean's real-life bond with William Bast, a fellow student who first met the rising star at the University of California, Los Angeles. The two men developed a friendship that evolved into an intimate union well before the world suspected James Dean might have been anything other than a sizzling heartthrob for starstruck teen audiences. In this script, I plan to delve into how that secrecy shaped Dean's career, the heartbreak that Bast endured while juggling devotion and self-preservation, and the impetus behind Brandon Flynn's involvement in bringing their story to life. Are we finally going to hear the unfiltered truth, or at least the most honest version we've gotten so far, from a Hollywood once notorious for brushing entire lives under the carpet? Stay with me as we explore every facet, the subtle manipulations of the studio system, the personal courage needed to survive in an era when homosexuality was demonized, and the unstoppable hunger for authenticity that seems to fuel modern filmmakers. In this epic retelling, we'll look at brand new revelations from Bast's memoir, the swirling rumors that persisted for decades after Dean's fatal accident, and the reason behind director Guy Guido's decision to anchor the story on the complexities of love, fear, and raw ambition. And, of course, we'll investigate how Brandon Flynn, known for harnessing fierce emotional power in 13 Reasons Why and other roles, might transform into a figure so iconic that his face alone triggers a jolt of nostalgia. If you sense your curiosity tingling right now, you're not alone. Dean's mythic status has beckoned fans for generations to examine the man behind the publicity stills. But first, let's rewind a bit and paint that 1950s backdrop. We're talking about a moment in history when careers could be destroyed by even the whisper of impropriety, when the production code and unwritten moral expectations forced a uniform image upon public figures. Even powerful stars discreetly played by the rules or risked exile from major studios and gossip columns alike. James Dean wasn't just a rebellious screen figure. He was also a real-life enigma known for adopting spontaneous, theatrical gestures. He was the type of actor who could look casual one instant and heartbreakingly vulnerable the next. Yet, to protect the viability of his rising stardom, certain truths had to be hidden. Among them, his close ties with William Bast. Bast himself, in his memoir, Surviving James Dean, recounted how their relationship was emotionally intimate, physically affectionate, and forced into near-complete secrecy to preserve Dean's budding career. At a time when mainstream society was quick to label and condemn, such a romance stood no chance of open acceptance. Just how secret was it, though? That question stirs fascination to this day. William Bast wrote of nights spent talking about creative ambitions, of fearfully checking the windows for any prying eyes, of living as roommates yet having to pretend outwardly that they were mere pals with purely platonic bonds. The heartbreak emerges when you consider that Bast, by his own admission, clung to the hope that maybe, someday, they could rekindle their connection openly, that once the bright lights of stardom softened into a stable career for Dean, they might finally be free to be who they were, no shadows required. But as we know, that dream was infinitely shattered when James Dean lost his life in that fateful car accident in 1955. Before we dive further, let's highlight Brandon Flynn. He's no stranger to tackling challenging material around identity, mental health, and emotional complexity. As an openly gay actor himself, he has carried the weight of representing authenticity in mainstream entertainment. His raw sincerity in 13 Reasons Why, or True Detective, made him a recognized face among audiences seeking realism rather than contrived dramatics. Now, he steps into the shoes of none other than James Dean. Imagine approaching that role, beloved by generations, entrenched in the pantheon of Hollywood greats, and trying to reveal a side of him that has remained largely hidden in popular culture. That alone sets the stage for an eye-popping cinematic experience, fueling our anticipation. In conversations about the film, Flynn hinted he'll bring a fierce determination to tell the story as it was, capturing the bright star, the vulnerabilities, and the illusions that hovered around Dean's illusions of normalcy. Truth and myth swirl often around figures like Dean. For decades, fans have debated whether he was gay, bisexual, or just going through a phase. Yet multiple individuals from the actor's life, fellow cast members, directors, and close friends, attested to the complexities of his romantic inclinations. Even Elizabeth Taylor, rumored to have known Dean in intense and personal ways, described the possibility of James Dean not fitting into a nice, neat box. Some pinned him as simply experimental, others were convinced he was fundamentally attracted to men. Hollywood, for its part, hammered out a standard narrative, a hot-blooded male star who enthralled female co-stars, unmatched in the smoky realm of 1950s cool. The new film dares to say, enough. Now we can add dimension, nuance, and that crucial perspective from the loyal companion who yearned for acceptance in an unforgiving era. So, here's the central question. How do you dramatize a love story that was historically invisible, one that took place behind drawn curtains, one that the world was never meant to see? That challenge is precisely what director Guy Guido hopes to unravel in Willie and Jimmy Dean. The production's approach is said to be unconventional, blending elements of psychological exploration with classic period drama. The tension alone should keep us hooked throughout, a couple navigating the swirl of mid-century Hollywood pomp, the suffocating demands of lies and half-truths, and the genuine longing two young men had for each other at a time when that longing was deemed unacceptable. If you're excited to learn how that tension might translate to the screen, go ahead and show some love. If you're feeling the pulse of this story, feel free to hit that thumbs up button to let everyone know you're riveted by this unfolding legacy. Now, about William Bast himself, he was more than just a passing figure in Dean's life. Born at a time when mainstream acceptance of same-sex relationships was practically non-existent, Bast lived and wrote the story that so many were afraid even to whisper. He'd pointed out how the early days of their friendship were brimming with shared aspirations. Aspirations that gave way to fear as Dean entered negotiations for roles that would eventually catapult him to stardom. Bast had to watch the man he loved transform into a Hollywood commodity. Did it spark jealousy? Perhaps, but more than that, it awakened a deep sorrow over the necessity of secrecy. He saw the romantic illusions overshadowed by the demands of an image-driven system. But in typical tragic fashion, hope lingered. Bast believed that once Dean had established himself as an artist, they could find a way to be together without the suffocating veil of lies. But real life rarely grants such tidy resolutions, especially not in 1955. That year, at just 24 years old, James Dean got into his Porsche Spyder, a car that would become an ominous symbol. The subsequent crash robbed the world not just of a phenomenal talent, but also of the chance to see how this star might have evolved once the dust of early fame settled. To Bast, the loss was immeasurable. He later wrote with genuine remorse, describing the ache of a love left incomplete. He recounted the glimpses of possibility that they had briefly entertained, and how the personal anguish of losing a dear friend, perhaps even the love of his life, haunted him into old age. It's that emotional core, that sense of what could have been, that will likely pulse at the heart of Willie and Jimmy Dean. At this point, you might be wondering how the film will handle these emotional layers. Don't worry, our deep dive won't simply gloss over the production details. Guy Guido, the writer-director, aims to frame Willie and Jimmy Dean as a lyrical exploration of two souls caught in a time that refused to accommodate them. The story picks up from the earliest days at the University of California, Los Angeles, weaving in the tension of living double lives. The production will likely show how Dean, always hungry for stardom, discovered that desire came with a massive personal cost. Meanwhile, Bast will be portrayed as someone grappling with his own sexuality at a time when few were bold enough to admit such things, even to themselves, let alone the public. The film is slated to conclude, heartbreakingly, with Dean's tragic accident, leaving us with that poignant question. Had he lived, would the two men have found a way to love each other in daylight, unafraid? But a question arises. How can a project like this speak to modern audiences when so many years have passed? The value lies in the universality of seeking authenticity in a world that often demands conformity. Think about it. Countless people still wrestle with identity and acceptance, and the stigma of difference remains in certain spheres. This story, though set in the 1950s, might resonate fiercely with individuals in the 21st century who know what it feels like to hide essential parts of themselves. For fans of James Dean, the film might help connect the dots between his on-screen persona, unbridled, rebellious, and unstoppable, and the quiet reality that behind that glare of fame, he carried burdens heavier than most of us realize. Could it be that everything we admired in Dean's acting was derived, in part, from the tension of living a carefully curated life? Here's something else that's sure to pique your curiosity: the screenplay itself. According to early rumblings, the script is layered with emotional flashpoints. From Bast's recollections of intimate late-night confessions to Dean's frantic attempts to juggle public romance with female stars, while always glancing over his shoulder to see if Bast was still there, waiting. There's also an undercurrent that highlights the broader struggles of queer Hollywood in that era. Actors forced into lavender marriages, newspapers bribed to keep certain truths under wraps, and managers who built entire PR campaigns on illusions. In short, if you've ever wondered whether old Hollywood was truly the land of glitter and magic or a labyrinth of personal sacrifice, this film credits that question with plenty of weight. And if you're excited by how deep we're going, consider subscribing right now to keep up with more explorations like this. After all, when we unravel Hollywood legends, we come face to face with a reflection of our own modern struggles. Another vital issue to consider: the line between speculation and documented fact. Filmmakers walking the path of a real-life story, especially one so controversial, often face accusations of sensationalism. Are we blowing a few glances or rumored flirtations out of proportion? Or is the film revealing a set of truths well known to those who inhabited Dean's private circle? The answer may be found in William Bast's memoir. He was there from day one, a friend, a confidant, and, ultimately, a partner who immersed himself in Dean's world. When asked in later interviews, Bast consistently reinforced the authenticity of his bond with James Dean, leaving little room to interpret it as mere speculation. While it's still possible that the film might amplify certain aspects for dramatic effect, the presence of Bast's first-person testimony bolsters the film's credibility. That is precisely why the Memo IR remains pivotal to understanding the heart and soul of this story. Bast himself passed away in 2015, never seeing this grand cinematic retelling. Still, he left behind an important legacy, an invitation to see James Dean for who he was, not just for what the studio press kits or the rumor mill insisted. By shining a light on their shared vulnerabilities, illusions, and heartbreaks, Bast effectively opened a gateway to a more empathetic reading of Dean's short life. Director Guy Guido has promised that Willie and Jimmy Dean will be tender yet candid, refusing to minimize the emotional stakes, and that, in many ways, might be what fans of honest storytelling crave. There's so much more nuance to icons than the standard headlines can capture. This new film, if done right, will serve as a corrective lens, merging cinematic craft with real-life sensitivity, thus delivering a perspective that's both raw and undeniably human. No less significant is the reaction from the LGBTQIA+ community. Pockets of fans have long celebrated James Dean as a rebellious spirit unbound by social mandates. They have claimed him as a symbol of defiance against any box set in place by cultural norms. By confirming his closeted identity on the big screen, Willie and Jimmy Dean could carve out a space for dialogue about the cost of hiding, the cost of subterfuge, and the slow but measurable progress we've made as a society in acknowledging same-sex relationships. At the same time, it might give new hope to people grappling with similar pressures. Even though we've advanced leaps and bounds from the 1950s, old stigmas do persist. The film's portrayal of Bast's longing and Dean's conflict might echo experiences still faced by many, albeit under less ruthless circumstances than mid-century Hollywood. Finally, let's revisit Brandon Flynn, who stands at the center of this ambitious retelling. In interviews, Flynn has underscored his enthusiasm for showing the man behind the icon, suggesting that audiences should prepare for a James Dean who is not just a cinematic emblem of rebellious youth. Instead, we'll see an emotionally charged story of a man wrestling with passion, fear, and the ticking clock of a rapidly accelerating career. By casting someone openly gay to portray Dean, the filmmakers invite a fresh authenticity to the role. The dimension of lived experience might allow Flynn to access emotional depths that resonate intimately with a concealed lifestyle. By bridging the chasm of decades, this performance has the potential to unify old Hollywood's secrets with new Hollywood's hunger for honest representation. The multifaceted talents behind the screen also indicate that we might see a thoughtful, daring approach that merges biographical detail with universal longing. And so, we arrive at a crucial juncture. Will Willie and Jimmy Dean resonate as a timeless love story about following your heart in a world that demands structural illusions? Will it open up broader questions about the burdens placed upon LGBTQIA+ actors in both past and present Hollywood? Above all, can it reveal fresh insights about an icon who remains on countless bedroom posters, despite leaving us so many years ago? That's the question fueling the hype, and it's why so many film enthusiasts, historians, and fans of James Dean are eagerly waiting for glimpses of footage, production stills, and more concrete details. Even after so many decades, the tragedy of Dean's early death gnaws at our sense of what might have been, both on-screen and in his personal life. This story is as layered as the man at its center. We have heartbreak, hidden love, towering ambition, outside pressure from moralistic standards, and the unstoppable thirst for stardom. Layer onto that the unstoppable magic of youth, a sense that anything is possible if only the times were not so restrictive. There's something universally appealing about that optimism, that idea that maybe we can rewrite the narrative if we collectively demand honesty and empathy. In the swirl of filming schedules, star interviews, and red carpet premieres, it's easy to get lost in the spectacle, but Willie and Jimmy Dean wants to be more than just spectacle. It wants to serve as a reflection on the real person behind the smokescreen of celebrity. Are we prepared to accept that James Dean, this symbol of raw, masculine energy, could also have been a vulnerable young man in love with another man? We'll find out soon enough. Today, we've unraveled the threads of both real-life history and cinematic ambition. We saw how Bast's early relationship with Dean blossomed in their UCLA days, turning into a romantic hope, overshadowed by the glare of spotlight. We revisited the heartbreak of 1955, the echo of losing a love that might have defied an entire era of discrimination. And we introduced Brandon Flynn, a new generation star with a passion for telling the stories that once lay dormant in dusty diaries. Sooner rather than later, we'll witness a portrait of James Dean that challenges everything we think we know, while adding texture, color, and emotional resonance to a Hollywood icon. If you've made it this far, and your mind is buzzing with fresh intrigue, you could be at the forefront of a new wave of James Dean fandom, one that embraces the fullness of his life, not just the truncated version. Thank you for coming along on this comprehensive journey. And if you're as fascinated by these hidden dimensions of Hollywood legends as I am, feel free to stay connected for more riveting breakdowns. That's all for now. The real revelations belong to the filmmakers, the cast, and the memoirs pages. But we, as audiences, hold the power to demand honesty and celebrate the real human stories beneath the glamour. With that, we close our spotlight on Willie and Jimmy Dean, a film that promises to unearth the legacy of James Dean in a way never before witnessed. How will the world react when a new generation sees the actor not merely as the moody heartthrob striking a cool pose, but as a man caught between private longing and public facade? Only time will tell. Yet in our hearts, we might already sense that the honesty, heartbreak, and hope woven into this tale could resonate profoundly, challenging future projects to dare more in telling complicated truths. Whether you're an ardent fan of Dean or simply someone who yearns for captivating stories told with compassion, keep your eyes on this production. The conversation around James Dean has only just begun, even after all these years. And maybe, just maybe, that conversation will set us all free to acknowledge and embrace the fullness of